Welcome to the first in a series of videos where we're going to be introducing the key concepts and terms and definitions that we need to talk about free will and our choices. The first thing we need to discuss is certainty and determination. Because when we ask whether or not something is determined, which is pretty much the essential question to this entire discussion, we're really asking, is this thing certain? Certainty and determination are synonymous for our purposes. So, what is certainty? Here's the essential definition that we are going to come back to over and over again. Something that is certain cannot be otherwise. So every time you hear the question of, okay, whether or not something is determined or is this thing certain, think to yourself, okay, can this thing be otherwise? And if it cannot be otherwise, then it is certain or determined. Another way of saying this is that there is no possibility, absolutely no possibility of a different outcome. So if there's no possibility of a different outcome, then you could say that it cannot be otherwise. And if it cannot be otherwise, then it is not certain. So those are the two interchangeable definitions, two ways of saying the exact same thing, that something is certain, when something cannot be otherwise and there's no possibility of a different outcome. So let's illustrate this by way of a few examples. First here is I have a set of train tracks that come to an intersection. So let's just say we're a bystander watching this train move up towards the top of the screen, and it reaches this intersection. At this intersection, it could go left on track A, straight up to track B, or take a right-hand turn and go track C. And if I were to tell you that I was certain that the train would take track A, would that be accurate? Would that meet our criteria of the definition of certainty, that something cannot be otherwise, and there's no possibility of a different outcome? Well, definitely not, because it could go track B or it could go track C. So there's a possibility of a different outcome, meaning that it can be otherwise. So we cannot be certain as to which way it will go. But if I were to disconnect track A and track B from this intersection, the only place it could go is track C. So now I could be certain that the train will take track C because there's no possibility of a different outcome, and therefore it cannot be otherwise that the train doesn't go on track C. Okay, now for a mathematical example. Certainty is known in statistics as confidence. And we're not really going to get into the weeds here, but I just want to touch the wave tops of how this works so we can see the relationship between certainty and the number of possibilities. So perfect certainty, or 100% certainty, or confidence, would be in the condition when we only have one possibility, right here. Now if I have two possibilities, that means that I have a 50% chance of being correct as to which outcome will happen. So 50% chance right there. Now I can keep going out 3, 4 possibilities. At 4 possibilities, once again, we would cut our certainty in half. That would be a 25% certainty. And then this would just keep continuing until we eventually reach a near infinite number of possibilities. And then when we get to infinity, we're going to have about a 0% certainty level, meaning that I can't really be certain about anything because there's just too many variables, there's too many possibilities. So I connect this line here, looks something like this, and we can see that there is an inverse relationship, a contradictory relationship between certainty and the number of possibilities. As the number of possibilities increases, certainty decreases. As the number of possibilities decreases, certainty increases. So right here, this first point, that's the point we really care about for our purposes in this course. This is the condition where something truly is certain or truly is determined. There can be no other outcome, and therefore it cannot be otherwise. So certain and determined is at that point. Now the very opposite of this would be in that near infinite condition down here. That would mean that something is random or contingent. Those are two ways of describing it, contingency and randomness. So we have those two opposite conditions. Now I want you to understand that anywhere past that first point in this line, anywhere past that first point is not fully certain. So even if you have a 50% confidence, because there's only two options in your mind, you still can't be certain about that because it's not fully certain. So when we ask if something is certain, we're only talking about that first point. Very important. Okay, this is more of an engineering example. So let's say we have a point on the end of this beam that's just free floating in space here, And that end of that beam is called point A. Now down here we have some ground that we could attach it to, but right now it's not fixed to anything. There's nothing attaching the beam to anything. So I have no idea where it's going to end up when you apply a force to it. It could end up, over here, or over here, or over there, or over here. But because it's not constrained by anything, there's an infinite number of possibilities as to where it could end up. Now let's say I constrain it in a small way. I put a roller support on it. It's got some wheels. Okay, now it's fixed vertically. It can't move up or down. It can only move side to side. So that would limit its possible range of motion to this plane right here. It could still end up over here, or over here, over here, but because something is constraining or reducing the number of possibilities, I have more certainty. But this would be like something on the graph where, we're kind of over here in this range. It's not perfectly random anymore, but it's also not fully certain. So it's still not good enough for our purposes. But if I were to replace this support with a fixed pin support, like this, now it can't move. It can't move vertically in this direction, and it can't move horizontally in this direction. So point A is going to be right here, and that would be, you could just define that as some height above the ground and some distance from the side of the page. But now I can actually tell you where point A is going to be. Right there, because it's fixed. Now this actually does meet our criteria of certainty, because there's no possibility of point A being anywhere else. The rest of the beam could rotate around point A, but point A itself is fixed, fully constrained by this support. So we discussed a couple of illustrations and got the definitions in our mind. The big takeaway I want you to have from this is that if something is certain, then something is determined. Those two things are synonymous. Philosophically, they have the exact same definition, that something cannot be otherwise. So if something cannot be otherwise and it has no possibility of a different outcome, it is certain, and certain means that it is determined. In the next video, we're going to take a look at a list of words in our language that we use to describe situations that are certain or determined, and get a better handle on that. See you there.